Hello, my name is Adam Garland. I'm the town manager here in Oxford. I'm doing this short video to give an overview of the upcoming town meeting warrant and review some of the budget-related items and other items that will be discussed at town meeting. As a reminder, town meeting this year is on June 1st at 10 a.m. That'll be held here at the town office, 127 Pottle Road. That's again, June 1st, 10 a.m., 127 Pottle Road. So when you get to town meeting, you'll have an opportunity to grab an information packet that we're going to have available for folks, just a quick reference guide. And within that reference guide, it has a copy of the town meeting warrant, but it also has a copy of each individual warrant article with an explanation and any budget sheets that would go along with that warrant article, or in the instance of some of the articles that address ordinance changes like a solar moratorium or land use updates, you'll find copies of what those updates are attached as well. It's just an effort to try and get as much information out there and make it readily available for folks on that day. That information is also going to be available on our website should you care to take a look at that prior. So just as a quick overview, this year the town's budget for municipal operations is $6,296,368. That is an increase of $581,000 over last year's operations. The town's capital request this year that will be discussed at town meeting is $1,010,557. Then when we look at the county assessment, just to also throw some of this other information out there, the county assessment is $657,849. That's an increase of $165,648. Also, the MSAD 17 assessment is $5,347,672. That is a $970,000 increase over last year. So the county assessment and the school assessment are not items that are decided at the Oxford town meeting. Those are handled at the county and school level separate from here. So let's dive into the town meeting warrant and review some of those items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so that we can be looking at the same item here. Okay, so here we go with the shared screen. All right, so what we're looking at here is the town meeting warrant. Again, just as a reminder, town meeting will June 1st, which is this Saturday at 10 a.m. here at the Oxford Town Office, 127 Pottle Road. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down and we'll get to our first warrant articles here. So as usual, we have to elect a moderator. It's a reminder that Article 2, to elect all municipal officers, water district, and MSAD directors, and so forth, that'll all be handled on June 11th, which is also going to be here at the Oxford Town Office. So the first article that really gets down to business here is Article 3. Article 3 talks about all the revenue, the projected revenues and so forth for the coming year, and authorizes the town to use those revenues, projected revenues, to offset taxes for the coming year. That's, as it says, everything from vehicle excise tax, boat excise, other fees, any of those type of things. And that is a common practice every year and is part of the annual commitment. Getting into the first operational budget is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $934,661 for the general government account. So a couple of notes on this. As you can see, last year was $797,520. A couple of notes on this is that in the past, we have referred to this particular warrant article or account as the administration. Well, as we have moved forward, administration seems a little bit misleading. Thus, we went with general government, because general government includes everything from the town's administration to the assessing department, code enforcement, boards and committees. And with all of those together, it seems more descriptive that it's general government because it's all those general functions all mixed together. Some might say semantics, but it made more sense to us on this end, so we hope that you agree. So all of those separate items, especially code enforcement and boards and committees, those were their own separate budgets last year. They have been combined together into one for this general government amount. So a couple of things that within that, why you see those significant increases is the selectmen made the decision over this last year to bring on a full-time assessing agent. Everybody's aware that the town went through a reval this last year. And one of the things that we certainly found was that only having an assessing agent 2 days a month just wasn't sufficient. We needed more assessing hours. And again, ultimately, the decision was made by the selectmen to bring on a full-time assessing agent. So you see that salary as part of this. Now, keep in mind that prior we were raising and appropriating $20,000 towards that position. So those funds also are going towards the assessing position. Also, so your big other things is you're seeing the increases in the payroll, and that's because of that added position, but also because of you had the cost of living changes, as well as we did have some changes in personnel out front, so the pay rates have changed to accommodate those. The health insurance line has also changed due to different levels of enrollment compared to what we had before. And that would also be what is said for the retirement line. You will also see the decrease to the assessing line because we moved the money from a contract agent and pushed that into the salary line or the payroll line, which left only money in the assessing line for mapping and assessing materials and so forth. So moving down to the Article 5. Article 5 is the police department and animal control accounts. The article asks to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,232,111 for the police department and animal control accounts. Last year was $1,073,273. As you can see, both the selectmen and budget committee recommend approval. And what you'll see there is this is an increase of $158,000. Some of the notable increases include payroll increases that are negotiated through the contract. We've also had changes in personnel at the police department. So you mix those together, and that's why you're seeing the general increase in payroll. Also, one of the things that was discussed at the budget meeting this year is the addition of a police officer patrol position. Both the selectmen and the budget committee recommended approval of this position. And to put that into perspective, the amount reflected on the budget sheet is $85,365. That is what it costs to hire on the pay scale, a mid-grade, if you will, police officer with benefits. That's health insurance and retirement. So when you're looking at this police budget, that is the one area that was discussed, and you'll see in your packet that it's specifically outlined on the budget sheet to show you that exactly what that costs. Otherwise than that, there was a decrease to the health insurance line because of, again, employee enrollment, and there was an increase in the retirement line with changes in rates for the retirement, plus also the current employee enrollment. Moving down to Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $903,086 for the highway department. Last year was $860,468. Both the selectmen and the budget committee recommend approval. The reason, again, just like with others, for the increase, which is a $42,618 increase. Part of that is, again, payroll with the cost of living increases that are negotiated within the contract. Also, during this last year, a lot of folks are aware that pay rates, it's been a very competitive job market. We were losing personnel and had to make a change. So one of the changes was a negotiated market adjustment with the union, the highway department union. So that's reflected in that increase as well. You do see a decrease in the temporary payroll line. This is the temporary payroll line encompass two different things. It encompasses both plowing, temporary plow drivers for the winter, as well as temporary workers to do the mowing for here in town. So the mowing has now been contracted out. So mowing has been removed from the temporary payroll line. So you see that there's a decrease there. However, we are having to pay for a mowing contractor, and that is handled later in the budget. And the mowing contractor handles both town properties as well as the ball fields and the cemeteries in town. So everything rec related, however, will be found in the rec department budget, which will be discussed a little bit later. You'll also see changes again to the health and retirement lines. And that again is due to the level of employee enrollment that we have at the time and the current rates. The road maintenance budget has also been increased this year. I don't think I need to go into too over the top, but the required road maintenance these last few years has been crazy with all the weather and so forth that we're getting. It's just a lot of beyond routine repairs that seem to need to be made. So we have made an increase to that line in order to accommodate. There was a decrease to the road salt line. We just found that we weren't needing the volume that we had budgeted for in the past, so we've made a decrease there as well. And you will also find that the gasoline and diesel lines have been reduced some. And the reason for that is we have our own pumps at the highway department, and we were able to go out to bid and get bid pricing on our diesel, which did save us and allowed us to lock in this year. So moving on, we go to the fire and rescue department account. And as just so folks are aware, what I'm doing as I'm reading along is I am actually referencing my own materials, which are going to be very similar to what you will be looking at the town meeting as well. So to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,071,671 for the fire rescue department. Last year was $977,522. As you can see, the selectmen and the budget committee both recommend approval. The increase, there's increases to the regular payroll line. The increase is again due to changes in the personnel, the hiring of a new full-time fire chief, and changes changes to the current payroll within the fire department to better reflect the level of professional certifications that folks hold that work for us per diem here at town. Also see an increase in the health insurance line. Now remember, health insurance is only offered to full-time employees. We only have one full-time employee at the fire department, and that is the fire chief. And based on that individual's enrollment is where we're basing that cost. There was a decrease to the equipment supply line, and this has just been decreased based on average use. And a decrease to the diesel line, again, based on the current bid price and the projected use for that particular item. I should note that I didn't note before that the increase to the overall budget for the fire rescue department is $94,148. So next we'll move on to Article 8, which is the public safety buildings, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $72,859 for the public safety buildings account. Last year was $78,214. So this budget shows an overall decrease of $5,355. As a reminder, the public safety buildings, that is the large building on Route 26 that holds the police and fire departments, and also the smaller building located here on Potter Road, often referenced as the North End Fire Station. So there was an increase to the electricity line, but there was a decrease to the heating fuel line based on current fuel bid rates and projected use. And we have also removed the cost of trash removal. Prior to now, we were contracting and having a dumpster located at the public safety building for the police and fire. And due to some changes on how we're handling the trash, the highway department is now picking up that, it's put in a central location, and they are hauling the trash down to the transfer station. So that is removing the cost of needing to rent a dumpster. So though not a huge savings, we'll certainly take what we can get. So moving on to Article 9. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $155,086 for the recreation account. Last year was $155,953. Selectmen and Budget Committee both recommend approval. So this budget shows a decrease of $860. Now, this is a little bit misleading, and I'll explain why. Because one of the things that you see within this budget is that the activities line and the sports activities lines have been zeroed out and moved into a capital reserve account, which I'll explain more later. It's not that the selectmen or the budget committee are trying to cut the activities that these items do. What it is that those particular items, often they require either entry fees, like summer rec, for instance. If a child is enrolled, there's an enrollment cost that the parents pay, and that money is used to offset the cost of the program. But also there's fundraising that comes in, which is why we felt it was better used to put it in a reserve account, a capital account, so that the money can roll forward every year and rotate. But again, when I get to the capital items, I'll go into more detail. So this slight decrease is not to cut programs. This slight decrease is to maintain what we're doing now, but then raise the other money separately. So otherwise than that, overall recreation does not see any major changes, increases, decreases. There was a slight increase to the payroll line, and that again is based on cost of living and merit increase for the full-time employee at the rec department, which is the rec director. Moving on to Article 10. This is the general assistance line. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $14,256 for the general assistance account. Last year was $7,800. So this is a increase of $6,456. And the reason for this is that the average number of GA applicants we have each year is about 88 this past year. After reimbursement from the state, the average cost of the town per applicant is $162. And the state does reimburse the town up to 70% of the GA costs. So based on our projected number of folks that we think are going to be having to use this program and what we are getting for state reimbursement, that is where the $14,256 amount comes from. Moving on to Article number 11. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $534,489 for the transfer and recycling account. Last year was $499,538. Both the selectmen and the budget committee recommend approval. This is a $34,950 increase. Some notable changes for this particular budget: decreases to the payroll line. That's not because we cut people's pay. It's because we had changes to the personnel at the transfer station, and the new folks that came on they had less experience, and they did start at a little bit lower pay rate. You did see an increase to both the health insurance and retirement lines. And again, that's based on current enrollment and current costs of those to offer those benefits. Increase to the tipping and hauling fee based on the current contractual rates and the overall use, and also an increase to the equipment maintenance line over at the transfer station. And this is based on just frankly the age of the equipment and the increased cost to maintain said equipment. So as we continue to move forward, Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $430,952 for the wastewater treatment account. Last year, $406,081. Both the selectmen and the budget committee recommend approval. So this is a $24,871 increase. Some of the notable changes here are you do see an increase of payroll based on cost of living and merit increases for the department employees. Also see an increase to the electricity line both based on current rates and projected usage. And you see an increase to the propane line for the department. We did put the propane out to bid, and we are locked in, but based on that and based on the projected use for the department, that line was increased. We did see a decrease of the chemical line, and that's based on what the sewer superintendent is telling us that we need to purchase for the coming year. It's been an education learning about sewer departments over the few years I've been here, and not all of the chemicals need to be purchased every year. There are some chemicals that are only every other year based on volume that you have to purchase them and so forth. So moving along again, Article 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $181,340 for the municipal accounts. Last year, $167,021. So as is spelled out right here in the warrant article, just to keep it straightforward, the municipal accounts we're discussing: liability insurance, animal shelter, fire protection, and unemployment. So liability insurance is it's pretty straightforward. Liability insurance is all of our property insurance and so forth here. You know, our buildings, our vehicles, the activities that employees engage in while providing service to the town. And that does see a significant increase from 89 to 104,000. Last year, we had enrolled with a new insurance company, but one of the things that we found after enrolling with a new insurance company is that our previous insurance company was actually not providing coverage for all of the in-depth the coverages that we needed here at the town. For instance, we thought all of our assets were, you know, more thoroughly listed, but now that we're with the new insurance company who's been more thorough with us, that's one of the reasons you see the increases. Now there's coverage for everything, and we're in a much better place. There have also had to be some claims over this last year as well. So with that being said, that's why you're seeing that increase. The animal shelter sees a slight increase, as you can see, and that is based on both the per capita rate that they charge us, as well as having to increase a little bit for the dealing with strays, as well as there's a cost to deal with strays. So the fire protection line sees a slight decrease, and that is due to the cost of electricity for street lights and so forth, which is where that falls. Unemployment stays the same, and we are self-insured for unemployment and those rates. So that brings us to the $181,340 mark. So as we move on, now let's go to the debt service. So the debt service, this one is a little bit more in depth, so I'll go ahead and read it to you. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $712,828 and appropriate an additional $809,137 from the Route 26 Omnibus Municipal Development TIF Reserve account and the Walmart Municipal Development TIF Reserve account for a total appropriation of $1,521,965 for town debt service as follows. So you have the town office bond. That's the new building that the town allowed us to purchase and be in to provide town services. And again, on behalf of all the staff, thank you so much for allowing us to do that. This is a beautiful facility that we're thankful every day for. So town office bond at $92,505 is the payment this year. We have the 5-year TD road bond, $412,790 this year. And the sewer bond is a total of $821,550. Now, this one is the first one to kind of note why the article above there is a little bit different. We're going to raise and appropriate $45,000 from the commitment, but the total appropriation is the $821,550. And the reason for that is that everything beyond $45,000 is going to be covered by the TIF districts to cover that debt service, which is something that the town's been doing for years. And that is the same case with the water line bond. You have the total appropriation is $122,587, but we're only going to be raising $90,000 on town meeting floor because the remainder of that is covered by the TIF district or TIF revenues, if you will. An additional item for the debt service is the selectmen approve the purchase of a front end loader for the highway department using a lease purchase option. So through this lease purchase, the front end loader has been purchased for the highway department to replace their old and aging piece of equipment that they have over there. And the first payment on that is $72,533. So again, raising on town meeting floor, and that will be part of the commitment this year when we set taxes, $712,828. And the appropriate, meaning that's a combination of what's being taken from raising during commitment here on town meeting floor, as well as what's taken from the TIF revenues, is $1,521,965. So moving on to Article 15, this is the library, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $48,028 for the Freeland Homes Library. Last year was $42,500. Both the Selectmen and Budget Committee recommend approval. So this, when you look at your materials for town meeting in your reference packet, the library did submit a budget to provide to both the Selectmen and the Budget Committee for reference. I would highly recommend you take a look at that. But again, the Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend approval. Moving on to Article 16, which is we refer to them third-party requests, if you will. These are the nonprofits that request funding from the town. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 as donations to the following community organizations. Note that last year it was $3,500 that were raised for this purpose. Seniors Plus, $2,000. Cancer Resource Center of Western Maine, $1,000. Oxford Historical Society, $2,000. Now, these other two, the Tri-County Mental Health and the Androscoggin, we either did not receive the request this year. I believe it was Tri-County that submitted a request, but then rescinded the request, saying that they did not need the funding. You'll note that the Oxford Historical Society, which I want to note is a separate nonprofit, it is not affiliated with the town, though it works with the town on various things, but they are not a department of the town. But the Historical Society request of $2,000 is a new request this year that both, again, the Selectmen and the Budget Committee agreed should be included. So that brings us to the $5,000 for Article 16. Now, moving on, this is where we get into the capital items. And one of the things that you're going to find in your handout for town meeting is with the capital items is that there is a sheet in here that you find right in the front of your town meeting handout that gives a rundown of what all the capital requests are for this year. And that coincides with what we're about to talk about here. So to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 for the cemetery cleaning and repair reserve account. Last year it was $5,000. Again, the Selectmen and Budget Committee recommend approval. This is, as the title expresses, so that we can do repairs and cleaning at the cemeteries. As we continue to move on here, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the Thompson Lake Dam Reserve Account. These funds are used, as it says, for the Thompson Lake Dam, for repairs, maintenance, and other items that come up for expenses for that dam facility. This dam facility, we've done, the town's done its best to try and keep things up, but there are things that continue to need to be done on a regular basis, and that's what this money is being raised and appropriated for, is to allow us to continue with that general maintenance. We have some fish screens that we need to finish getting installed. There are some upcoming repairs and maintenance that need to be done to the retaining wall at that facility, as well as general cleaning and so forth that the highway department does for us. We did, for anybody that's interested, install a scale down there to show the water levels. We were getting a lot of questions over the last year about water levels, but the Department of Inland Fisheries was kind enough to work with us to install a water level scale. So you can walk right up to the fence and you can look right at the dam and you can see what the water levels are if that's something that interests you. So the next item is Article 19, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $110,550 for the wastewater treatment facility reserve account, projected to be allocated as follows. So again, the Selectmen and Budget Committee both recommend the above capital requests. The first is treatment plant emergency repairs for $35,000. This is something that we do every year, and as it states, it's for emergency repairs to the treatment facility. Pump station emergency repairs, $10,000. Again, this is something that's been done annually to allow for repairing of the pump stations. Something new this year is the Pigeon Hill pump station generator for $61,550. Currently, every pump station in the town has a generator hookup so that the sewer department can take the portable generator and go from pump station to pump station to run it during a power outage, excuse me. But the Pigeon Hill station sees a lot of volume that comes through there for sewer materials. So the sewer department superintendent is hoping to start placing standby generators at most of the higher use pump stations, but specifically the Pigeon Hill pump station. So this year, the request is $61,550 to place a permanent standby generator at that location. And then the last thing is a $4,000 request to be able to replace on the sewer department truck. There is a crane that's used to pick up and move equipment and so forth. And the old crane just is, it's older and it just doesn't quite have the capacity that's needed in order to keep doing what it's doing. So it needs to be replaced. So that's the $4,000 request, which brings us to the $110,550. Moving on to Article 20. Article 20, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $220,429 for the transfer station reserve account, projected to be allocated as follows. So again, the Selectmen and Budget Committee recommend approval of these capital requests. The first is the recycle baler for $170,184. So the recycle baler, what that is I'm sure everybody's seen it. When you go into the recycle building, out in the back, there's this conveyor belt looking thing. And what it takes all the plastics, it takes all of the cardboard and all those recyclable materials, and it puts it into a bin, squishes it and bales it. And what that does is it makes it a lot easier to handle, and it makes it so the transfer station is actually able to move these along, and we can even get a little bit of revenue sometimes from the cardboard and so forth, where that way it's not just loose and so forth. The baler we have, you'll have to forgive me, I don't know how many years old it is, but I know it is super, super old. I believe well over 20 years old. And the last few times we've had to get repairs done to it, it just simply, it's difficult to find parts for it. It's been repaired and glued together so many times that it's now getting to the point where repairing it's not impossible, but it's becoming very difficult, either due to parts or because it's been fixed so many times. So the request is $170,184 to replace that baler for the recycling center. Golf cart, I will admit I did giggle a little bit when this was requested, but it's a legitimate request. $2,500 for the golf cart. And what this is used for is, I'm sure if you've been to the transfer station, you've seen the attendants there. Sometimes they have to go quite a long distance to get out back to help service customers and so forth. The golf cart allows them to be able to very quickly get from either the transfer station up to the recycling center, out back to the wood pile, out to the tire pile. All those, they allows them to be able to get quickly to where they need to go to both service customers, but also to keep an eye on what's going on to ensure that inappropriate materials are not being dropped off. The next two items are related to each other: the recycle building bathroom and recycle building well. The bathroom for $25,000 and the recycle building well for $16,500. And what these two items are is currently there's a porta potty located at the recycling building. So it's either for the employee working down at the recycling building, they either have to use the porta potty or they have to walk up to the transfer station building to use the bathroom facilities. In working through this budget process, the request was that we build a bathroom facility there. We looked at seeing if the Oxford Water District could run a water line in there, but unfortunately it's less feasible than digging a well. The intention of the well is to provide water, of course, just simply for flushing and washing hands and so forth. The recycle building windows for $6,245. Those are the windows that when you pull up to the recycling building and you're putting your materials into the building, those old windows, they're not actually glass, they're just wooden doors that get shut and so forth. They're falling apart and no longer really that serviceable. So this would be replacing them with a pull down type locking system that would be just more secure and in better shape. So that brings us to the $220,429 capital request. Moving on to Article 21, to see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $22,500 for the Recreation Reserve account. And here we go with some of the comments I made earlier regarding summer rec and so forth. So as I said, the sports activities and the activities lines have been removed from the operating account, and we've moved them now into this reserve account. Summer rec reserve, $11,000. And so the summer rec reserve is primarily funded by enrollment fees and fundraising. This is, however, only the second year for the summer rec program. This funding would be used to cover any funding gaps for the program and any possible one-time purchases needed for the town to continue to develop the program. So that's why you see that $11,000 mark. The hope is as the program continues to grow, that it'll become more and more self-funded into the future. Sports activities. The sports activity, these are offered by the rec department, generally funded by fees and donations. This fund would allow for some free and or lower cost programs to be offered. Funding would also allow for some one-time purchases, again, for any sports or general activities that are going to be offered this coming year. The Pismo Snack Shack stairs for $2,000. If you've been down to Pismo Beach, the sports complex there, you can see the snack shack is kind of up on the hill. Accessing the service window on that is a little bit of a steep incline. The rec director was thinking that a set of decent stairs would just make the approach more comfortable and feasible for folks. So that's where the $2,000 comes from. Parking lights for Pottle Field for $5,000. These are not to light up the entire field. This is just to provide some ambient light in the parking areas for Pottle Field. We are trying to take more advantage of that nice facility here on Pottle Road, but have been receiving feedback that at nighttime it's quite dark in that parking area. Pismo electrical shed for $2,500. And this is to replace the electrical shed that is currently there. It's not to replace the panels that control the lights and so forth for the complex. It's just to replace the shed itself. The shed itself is rotting and it's falling apart and it just needs to be replaced. So that's thus the $2,500. So that brings us to the $22,500. Moving on to the Article 22, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $78,328 for the police equipment reserve account, projected to be allocated as follows. $60,000 for a police vehicle. If folks remember, we've been trying to replace one police vehicle per year. That includes the vehicle and the equipment inside. Given the amount of use that these vehicles see, replacing them annually, one vehicle per year allows us to continue through the rotation and replace the vehicles before they become a maintenance nuisance, if you will, and just costing way too much in maintenance costs. A lot of times when these vehicles get to the end of their lifespan as a police car, they do still have some use as an administrative car. Like for instance, you'll see that in front of the town office right now, one of the old Ford Explorers is being used as a general administrative car for trainings, or the code enforcement officer uses it to do his inspections. The replacement of 3 police tasers for $16,728. Based on the age of the tasers the police department currently has, trying to cycle these out and get them newer, more reliable tasers. And then a ballistic uniform vest, that's just the body armor that the police officers wear. We try and continue to be in the rotation of replacing those one annually as well. That brings us to the $78,328. As you can see, the selectmen and the budget committee both recommend approval. Moving on to Article 23, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $250,000 for the Highway Improvement Reserve account, projected to be as follows. Road repairs, $200,000, Rabbit Valley Road engineering, $50,000, bringing us to the $250,000 amount. So this is one of the few, only warrant article that the selectmen and the budget committee had a difference of opinion on. The selectmen recommend the $250,000 mark. The budget committee recommends $100,000. So the reason for that is during the budget process, the selectmen felt that more funds should be set aside specifically for road repairs. That's the reason that you're seeing that $200,000 mark, and that is to deal with, again, on top of what's in the operation account for highway department. Going beyond that, this $200,000 is intended for small road projects and emergency repairs, especially with these washouts, the major culverts, those type of items. So that's what the intention of these funds are. The $50,000 is that we recognize, when I say we, I mean the town has recognized this last year, that the Rabbit Valley Road is suffering from a great deal of runoff and washouts and water issues. And that's specifically, for reference point, from about where the casino parking lot is on Rabbit Valley, all the way down to the Hogan Whitney Pond down at the bottom of the hill. I think it's about a mile and a quarter of a stretch there. The amount of water that's going down that is washing out driveways and culverts and just causing a great deal of damage to the road. We have consulted with an engineer who has given us a potential amount of $1.7 million to repair the road up to snuff so that it won't be washing out like that. That would be with underground drainage and so forth, similar to like you would see on Allen Hill, what the town did a few years back. So the town is not asking, the selectmen are not asking for $1.7 million this time around. The town is simply asking, I shouldn't say simply, the town is asking for $50,000 this year to allow for the engineering and surveying of this project. That will allow us to have design documents and so forth and put the project out to bid. If the project goes out to bid and we have the design and survey done, the next step, when we have a firm number, if it is 1.7 million, more or less, we will then come back to the town and request probably a road bond would be my recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, is through a road bond, be able to then request funding for those repairs. But the getting of a road bond would have to go through either a referendum vote or a town meeting vote. So more to follow, but the $50,000 is the request for engineering and surveying for Rabbit Valley. Moving on to Article 24, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $13,750 for the Fire Rescue Equipment Reserve account. We're looking to do air pack tanks, 5 of them. Looks like I misspelled pack when I did the warrant. Anyways, I need 5 of them for $5,250. We do have many air packs at the fire department. We are trying to continue on a rotation of doing 5 at a time, and that allows us to not have to do all of the air packs all at once. So currently, I believe we have north of 44 air tanks at the fire department. So if we do 5 at a time, that allows us to always continue to be replacing them before the expiration date. Turnout gear, 2 sets for $8,500. Again, the goal of this is to continue to rotate through our turnout gear so that we're never having to have an instant where we're replacing all of it at once. We did, over this last year, have to replace, given some concerns with some of the gear, the selectmen did have to replace a good quantity of gear, but that has been addressed. And generally in the past, we were doing 4 sets at a time, but given that current replacement, we're requesting 2 at a time. So that brings us to $13,750. Article 25, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 for the fire rescue vehicle reserve account. And this $300,000 request is not specific to a specific truck or piece of equipment, but generally what we're seeing is that fire apparatus is insanely expensive, whether it be a tanker, whether it be a fire engine, whether it be an ambulance. For references, you're seeing ambulances costing $400,000. You're seeing fire engines costing north of $600,000. But one piece of fire apparatus that's been being talked about by the fire chief is the potential for a mini pumper. And a mini pumper kind of is the meeting between a utility squad type truck and a small fire pumper engine, if you will, that would be able to get into smaller, tighter spaces. And those generally do cost a little bit less. So this $300,000 would go towards, potentially, if that's the direction we go, towards that purchase. But the general gist of this $300,000 is to allow for the starting of savings towards the next fire truck purchase. Article 26. This is the first ordinance item. There are only 2 ordinances, but this is the first one. To see if shall an ordinance entitled Town of Oxford Solar Energy Facility Moratorium Ordinance be enacted. So there are copies of this with the clerk. There will be copies at town meeting as well, should you want to grab that. But also in that town meeting info reference packet, you'll find a copy of the proposed ordinance. So from the selectmen, given the number of solar facilities, commercial facilities that are being built in Oxford, the selectmen are concerned about the impact these facilities may have on the town. The purpose of this moratorium is to pause further solar development and allow the town time to review potential impact of these developments. So if the selectmen through this review find that there needs to be changes or future ordinances to oversee these solar developments, then that's what will be proposed in the future for town meeting to vote on. If they find that is not needed, then no further action will be taken and the moratorium will expire. So this is just simply it's not to prohibit, it is simply to hit the pause button to allow the selectmen some breathing room to see what, if anything, needs to be done. Article 27. Article 27 is shall an ordinance entitled 2024 Amendments to the Oxford Zoning Ordinance be enacted. Again, this is available at the clerk's office. There'll be a copy of the proposed changes in your info packet, but then there'll be copies of the full warrant available here at the town meeting as well. So what this is that the state approved LD 2003, which these were changes included in these were changes to update the the zoning ordinances across the state, and to bring us into compliance with LD 2003, which is in regards to density requirements and those kind of things. So there are also some grammatical updates that were done to the warrant as well, the ordinance as well. So this isn't to change a lot of the meat and potatoes of our ordinance, but it was to bring us in line with LD 2003 from the state. So, and again, those copies are available should you want them. And Kingston Brown, the code officer, will be available at town meeting to answer any specific questions that folks may have on that as well. So moving on to article number 28, to see if the town will vote to authorize, delegate, and ratify acceptance and delivery of easements by the selectmen on behalf of the town in order to facilitate town-related construction projects. This again is a housekeeping item that is on there every year. As it says, this allows the selectmen to either allow or accept easements for town projects and so forth. Article 29, to see if the town will vote to appropriate 100% of the snowmobile refund check for the purposes of maintaining snowmobile trails by the Rockadundee Snowmobile Club, such maintenance to be performed only with the landowner's permission and only on trails that are open for public use. So again, this is something that is a general housekeeping item that is done every year. And this allows the town to provide our snowmobile excise tax revenues to the club to use for those purposes. And last year it was $1,600 that was collected. So I'm going to slide through some of these. One of the other ones that has been discussed in the past, I think that is of interest, is Article 31. And that is to see if the town will vote to authorize a selectman on behalf of the town to sell and dispose of any real estate acquired by non-payment of taxes and on such terms it deems advisable, and to execute deeds for such property, and the proposed action of the selectmen shall be advertised for 2 weeks, provided that all such sales or dispositions shall be conducted in compliance with 36 MRS 943C. So that was a whole mouthful to say basically that town meeting is authorizing the selectmen to deal with tax foreclosed properties. The law for tax foreclosed properties continues to change. Now it seems like on an annual basis. Thus, the reason that we're including the MRS 943C, because there are procedures in there on how that the sale is supposed to be handled, as well as how the revenue from that sale is supposed to be handled as well. And inside of your town meeting packet, you will find a copy of 36 MRS 943C, should you choose to review that. So moving through, many of these are some, again, boilerplate items. Article 35, however, I have been asked questions about Article 35 in the past. And this is in regards to specifically when tax due dates are, as well as, so there's two due dates, October 25th and April 25th. It also discusses the interest rate, annual interest rate of 8.5%. So what I've been asked in the past about is, where does that 8.5% amount come from? So the state of Maine annually sets what the annual interest rate for unpaid taxes are. This year, they set the interest rate at 8.5%. And again, if folks are curious, in your reference packet, you will find the state statute as well as the current rate, so that folks can look at that if they so choose. And then moving on to Article 36. Article 36, this allows the town, as it says, the town manager and the selectmen, but working together to apply for grants. And this is everything from CDBG to FEMA to any other kind of general grants that you can think of, and to use those funds for town business. This is a somewhat boilerplate, but housekeeping item that is done every year. Article 37 is kind of an extension of this Article 35, which was discussed a moment ago, that I've been asked about, to see if the town will vote to establish a rate of interest at 4.5% for those who have received an abatement or have overpaid their taxes for the fiscal year 24-25. Again, this is a rate that is set by the state. It can, in this case, only be 4% less than the 8.5%, thus bringing us to 4.5. So the state law is attached. If folks would like to take a look, they can have a look at that and see where the town comes up with those numbers. But all right, so we've pretty much covered a majority of the non-housekeeping items. The last remaining one that I would like to actually touch on is Article 39. Article 39 was new last year and is also included this year. And I'll go ahead and read it real quickly here. To see if the town will vote to authorize the treasurer to waive the foreclosure of a tax lien mortgage by recording a waiver of foreclosure at the Registry of Deeds in which the tax lien certificate is recorded, prior to the expiration of the right of redemption pursuant to 36 MRS 944, upon defining by the selectmen that ownership of the property that is subject to the tax lien mortgage would be contrary to the town's best interest. So, in a nutshell, what this does is it allows the selectmen to have the ability to waive a tax foreclosure. I'm sure we can come up with different examples, but there are certain properties that if they go into foreclosure, they would actually be more of a hindrance upon the town to have to deal with the property than if we didn't take possession of it. So what this does is it allows the selectmen to have that level of discretion so that they can choose if the right thing to do is to take possession or not. So again, this was added last year. It's in here this year as well. It's more of a housekeeping item, but I think it's important, and I think the selectmen would agree it's important that they have that discretion so they can take these properties, not take as in take possession, but take a review of these properties on a case-by-case basis so the town does not end up in a position where the town is having to care for or deal with something that would be significantly outside of the best interest of the town. So that covers the warrant articles here that I wanted to discuss. I hope that this information is helpful. I hope that you can join us at town meeting again on June 1st at 10 a.m. here at the Oxford Town Office. This was again, all these materials can be found in this reference guide on our website, and you'll be able to find them here at the town office when you come to a town meeting. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to join me here and listen to me talk for quite some time, and I hope this was informative. Thank you very much.